Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to a fresh story book talk, as we like to call it. Today we're here with a friend, Tiffany. Tiffany, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your book?
Sure. I'm Tiffany Graham Charkosky. I have my debut memoir, Living Proof How Love Defied Genetic Legacy, coming out this October. And it tells the story of my journey through genetic testing and the sort of emotional toll that process took, and kind of the aftermath of learning that I landed on the side of the coin that we all hope not to land on, but how I've been living my life in the year since. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Of course, of course. Can you hold up the book so we can see it for everybody?
Sure, I would be so happy to.
That's a beautiful cover, by the way.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
love it. Yeah.
yeah, beautiful. Okay, so I have so many questions, Tiffany. Um, as a memoirist and a writer, where does that spark come from? Like, well, this is my life and I'm going through all this hard shit to like, oh, I'm now going to write a book about this. Where is that bridge?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think, I was a writer even before I started working on this book. I think for a lot of memoirists, you end up telling a story that you maybe couldn't find someone else having already told, or that for me, it was the story that I went through this genetic testing back in 2012. And I'm the kind of person who loves to read about everything I do, cookbooks, gardening books, parenting books, you name it, fiction, nonfiction. I love to read all of it. But I was feeling like I couldn't find a story that was like speaking to where I was in this sort of emotional place. And I think what started as a horrible blog that I had nobody read and journal entries that, I hope no one ever finds again. I started to feel like maybe I had the story that would have really helped me at that time. And I think that, it took a long time. It took about 10 years to actually like take these experiences and really distill them down into a story that felt like it was ready for other readers. So I don't think it was like I woke up one day and said, I'm going to write a book, but it was a gradual process of learning to listen to myself and developing my craft and, really figuring out what that story.
Okay, so without giving away too many spoilers, can you take us like through the story a little bit?
Sure. I lost my mom when I was 11, and we didn't know that she had colon cancer. And it was basically like a bad luck feeling. It was like, this was a thing, this happened. It sort of defined my whole life. And then I, grew up, I went to college, I had children of my own. And I discovered that my uncle, who had actually also passed away, he'd had testing right before he died. And we got a phone call from my aunt, my uncle's wife, and learned that it wasn't just bad luck, that it was genetic bad luck. And that I may have inherited this gene as well. So I think that the story was, what can I do to keep my children from going through that loss? And then it also really ended up being like confronting that, death of my parent. I saw it through adult mother eyes. So it sort of goes back and forth in time with, me as a child, trying to show what that was like, and then how to parent children when you don't have a mother. There's no roadmap for that. And then, if this is something that, my children may have to deal with, how can I be the role model that I want to be for them? So, yeah.
I cannot wait to read it. So who would you say this book is for?
Well, when I worked on my proposal, I talked about kind of primary audiences, and then secondary audiences. So for me, like anybody who has lost a mother, like I think Hope Edelman wrote Motherless Daughters, and then this book called Motherless Mothers. And I feel like, those readers, people who struggled with, losing a parent. And I know we all lose parents and we all lose them at
Yeah, but
different
there's a
times in
difference.
our
I mean,
life. Yeah.
I have a lot of girlfriends who lost their moms at 10, 11, 12 years old, and it impacts every single cell in your body.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing that. I feel like it's sort of like, what did I learn from this? And is this an experience that I've seen explored in writing? And then the other piece, is of course people who have, gone through genetic testing, or maybe they have a friend or relative themselves going through that testing. So I think there's sort of like a couple audiences here. I hope um, that this book isn't just, for people who have to go through testing. It's not a how-to guide. It's not that type of book. It's more just this was my journey. And I hope, that's what I love about memoir. You can read a story about somebody and their life is totally different than yours, but you're seeing like they're having this emotional experience. It feels like a mirror to your own emotional life. And I feel like I hope that, readers who are looking for a space to be seen in an emotional time, potentially related to, grieving or health issues might be who that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and also, like, not that it's the same, but, like, I think that with mental illness, there's also a discussion there, right? Like, my family didn't necessarily have the genetics for, like, predisposition to cancer, but we have predisposition to suicide, right, and things like that, and so I think that, like, I can see myself reading this book thinking, like, "Wow, what an interesting, like, mirror to look at," right, about, like, discovering who you are through your family, which is something that we're not born in a vacuum, right? Like,
Right.
we come
Yeah.
from our family, and I think to go back to what you were saying about motherless mothers, I know so many women that have had to make the decision, do I want to become a mother or not, based on their experience of losing their mother, right, at a young age, before you know who you are, right, before you knew who your mother was. And I think that that is something that we still don't talk about enough, for sure. And I know that there's a lot of people. I'm excited to send this book to so many people that I know and I love. So I'm just grateful for you, and I'm grateful for the book, and I cannot wait for people to find it. Where can they support the book now?
It can be pre-ordered from Amazon. Bookshop.org has it.
Great.
It's released October 21st.
Okay.
And so it's published through Little A, which is one of Amazon's publishing houses. And so it will mainly be available digitally, but you could ask your local bookstore to
Yeah,
find it.
or request it from your library, which is what we love to
Exactly.
do. And we will put the links for Amazon and all the places in the show notes as well. Tiffany, before we let you go, if somebody's considering writing a memoir, what would be some words of encouragement you could like leave them with?
I think I would say give yourself time to explore your own feelings, your own emotions. And I know for me, this book took a long time. The first draft was in need of so much work. I didn't even know sort of where to begin. And so I let it sit for a while. And then when I really got into the editorial process, what was amazing to me was my book is about 65,000 words, it's about 220 pages. It has stayed that length, for the duration of my editorial process, but I can't tell you how many times I cut out 30 to 40% and rewrote 20 or 30 to 40% and did that process over and over again. And it's weird how much you have to write through um, to get to know yourself and to find your story, but that doesn't really belong in your book. And I think that if what you want is to write a book that people want to read, it has to be about a thing that you've experienced, not just sort of like my life story. And so going through that editorial process, I have a wonderful literary agent who was very helpful in edits. And she said, Tiffany, tell me what this book is about. If this scene isn't about what the book is about, I need you to either tell me why the scene is here or think about,
Right.
does it need to be here? And I think when you're sort of early on in that stage, you feel like every word is precious. You're trying so hard just to like hit these daily word count goals, and everything feels like necessary. And I think you need that time to, one, be okay with editing yourself. And two, I think for a lot of memoirists, it really is interesting to me how many of them say this thing that happened to me 10, 15, 20 plus years ago. And I think you need emotional distance to be able to add any sort of wisdom. I
Yeah.
think if you're like fresh in like the emotional state or fresh in your grief or living inside the wound still, like you're not really in a place to offer perspective. And I think giving yourself the grace to kind of move through that period and know that like you can always go back to that, but that you really need to think about giving yourself the space between the experience and the creation of work or art around it. So, to me, those are the things I wish someone had told me
Mm.
early on. And as you know, somebody who does not have an MFA and is just sort of plugging away at this, going to writing workshops when I can. Like it feels like, where do I go? What do I do? Am I
Yeah.
doing this right? But I think it's the showing up over and over for yourself that is really healing and helpful.
Oh, I love that so much. I think Glennon Doyle talks about that a lot too, right? Like stepping back from the moment and letting it process. And I feel the same way. Sometimes my sister and I will hop on a podcast to process things, and that podcast will never see the light of day. So I very much understand. Amazing, Tiffany. Like I said, we'll put the links in the show notes. I appreciate you sharing, and we are so excited to read. And thank you for opening your life up to, help other people see and process also.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Olivia. It means so much to talk to you, and I'm grateful to this for this space.
Of course.